certain technology changes or the advent of new technology. I don't profess to have any particular insight into politics or extreme economics, but I have a strong belief that the things that have made the human condition better were scientific or engineering achievements like antibiotics or aqueducts or the internal combustion engine or the printing press. And so that's what fascinates me. The mobile wave is really the fifth wave of computing. I thought about writing a book during the fourth wave of computing, but I got distracted. I took my company public with the dot-com explosion. And during the fourth wave, we had a wave of innovation characterized by software running on the internet devices. And there were less than 500 million internet devices, and they were used predominantly by white-collar workers 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, less than 15 hours a week. And they impacted a very small percentage of society. Less than 5% of our economy, I think, was impacted by applications running on web browsers back in the year 2000. But we remember the impact of that. We called it the dot-com revolution, and it created companies like Yahoo and Google and Amazon, and lots of money was made, and lots of money was lost. But at its core, the fourth wave of computing didn't really change the way 3-year-olds learn or 80-year-olds live. It didn't change prescription drugs or health care or traffic tickets, or it didn't impact our relationship with society or governments and crime. And so it was a fairly intellectual exercise. Amazon became this great dot-com based upon tweaking the catalog industry a bit. I think the fifth wave of computing is the mobile wave, and that's actually the more powerful one, because the mobile wave is the wave of software development where software becomes vapor. Software was sort of a solid state thing 10 years ago. Now it's vapor. It's all around us. It's going to run on 5 billion devices. There's no doubt there'll be 5 billion smartphones within a matter of quarters now, by 2015. We're manufacturing them at a ferocious rate right now. Within 10 years, I think there's not really much question there'll be 5 billion tablet computers. I think it's increasingly likely that the majority of those tablet computers may be coming from one company, Apple, which is extraordinary. I think that if you took a poll of opinion makers or decision makers in the tech industry, most people would agree with me that 5 billion smartphones is not too much of a stretch. I think most people would not have thought about it, or maybe would not agree with me that 5 billion tablet computers are on their way. I think that it is inevitable, and I think that the market has undervalued that and mispriced it. I think, for example, Apple computers have been underestimated. Their results have been underestimated for 29 of the past 30 quarters. The market consistently underestimates that company. But it's now cheaper to learn to read with a tablet and with an iPad than it is to learn to read with paper. It's $1,000 to buy textbooks in high school and paper. It's $600 to buy an iPad. You can learn from any of, you might very well take 100 courses at age 6 on an iPad. I got offered the chance to learn Spanish and French at age 14 from my middle school. I think that there are revolutions coming in education. I think if you look at the impact of mobile software morphing the book business, the newspaper business, the magazine business, the entertainment business, and business documents and legal documents and medical documents like x-rays, it's pretty clear that this is going to proliferate. I can't see any person of consequence or education at all not having a tablet computer in 10 years. And I think that the only reason that we don't see more out there now is I think that we're basically capacity bound. We're manufacturing iPads as fast as the human race can manufacture them, and Apple's running with an inventory of an hour. If you look at industry developments, and again, I'll say a few things which may be controversial, but the non-controversial stuff is not that interesting. I think that Apple clearly is winning the market and leading the market. I think Google is number 2. I don't think Android is nearly as powerful in driving the agenda of the marketplace as Apple is. I think that there's a tendency for people to get enamored with Android, but I think that the iOS is clearly the dominant mobile standard, and Apple is the dominant company in this space. 83% of the wealth creation in the S&P 500 was Apple stock in the past 12 months. I think this extraordinary statistic is not an advertisement in favor of diversification. There's a lot of conventional thinking in the marketplace, conventional wisdom about diversity. People think that, for example, Apple stock can't go any higher because it's already the most valuable company on earth. But what they miss is that Apple is the most extraordinary company in the history of the world. There's never been a company that had the influence of Apple. They've got 400 million credit cards in the iTunes store. That makes them more powerful and more wired than any bank or any government on the face of the earth. They have every expectation of having 1 billion customers tethered to their operating system. And that will probably go to 2 or 3 billion. There's never in the history of the earth been something like that before. The iPad's the most successful consumer device in the history of the world, and is being held back by manufacturing constraints. Over the past month, there's been some extraordinary set of developments, and if you look at the way the industry is evolving, the release of the Google 7-inch tablet to compete with the Kindle Fire is symbolic of a number of truths. One of them is that I think Google realizes they need to be in the device business, and I think increasingly everybody realizes if you don't have an integrated device that's got hardware, chips, and operating system, and some application software integrated, then you probably can't succeed in the mobile business because of the technical requirements of battery consumption and radio bandwidth management, and the challenge to stabilize a multi-touch interface when I move my finger around it rapidly. So I think that Google's thrown in the towel, and they realize they're going to have to be in the phone business, have to be in the tablet business. I think that Amazon did the same thing with the shipment of the Kindle Fire. Now there's rumors on the street that Amazon's going to create a phone. I think that the fact that both those companies released a 7-inch tablet is also salient. Jeff Bezos is one of the richest men in the world, and one of the most aggressive men in the world, and one of the most intelligent men in the world, and also one of the most insightful tech entrepreneurs in the world. He's a guy that actually bought thousands of acres of land in West Texas to create his own rocket launch facility. This is not a person that thinks in any particular constraint. This is a person that's going to go for it. And yet, he didn't ship a 10-inch tablet computer. So ask the question, why would a person with effectively infinite money, with a position in the book business, with everything to lose, with a proven aggressiveness, with a proven ability to see where the industry is going, why would he not ship a 10-inch tablet? Because if you look at all the paper in your life and consider how much is on a 10-inch form factor versus a 7-inch form factor, you realize pretty quickly that 90 to 95% of all printed materials on the face of the earth need to be rendered in a 10-inch device. You can read paperback books, and you can do remote control of your television on a 7-inch tablet. You can play inconsequential games. But legal documents, business contracts, high-definition television, interactive textbooks, educational programs, maps, all these things need to be on a 10-inch device. Why didn't Amazon make one? And for that matter, why didn't Google make one? Because the most intelligent companies on the face of the earth with regard to the mobile wave are Amazon, Google, and Apple. And when you look at what intelligent people with infinite money do, I think that tells you a lot more than anything else. They have all the information, and they have all the motivation. They're shipping 7-inch tablets on Android. Why? Because I don't think anybody can ship a 10-inch tablet on Android. Either because there's no supply of 10-inch multi-touch interfaces. I think Apple may very well have locked up the entire supply at scale in the world. That's one possibility. Or the other possibility is Android is not stable on a 10-inch platform. But either way it is damning, right? Either way, the conclusion is Apple is driving this industry, and we're capacity bound, and Apple's bought up all the capacity. And I think that's a fascinating observation. The only other company, by the way, that's managed to put anything out there is Samsung, and Samsung's being slapped with injunctions due to Apple's legal strategy, which is, I think, pretty effective, and it's devastating to Android right now. Devastating. Because we're about to be 3 years into the release of the iPad, and there is no effective competitor on the 10-inch form factor to it, which means that no one's going to be able to enter the home market, and no one can enter the enterprise market. Right? Every application built on Windows or built on the web is a candidate to be ported to a tablet computer, and as you port them, they're 10 times better. Once you use an application on an iPad, you don't want to go back to using the application on a laptop or the desktop ever. Right? And 3-year-olds playing the piano on their iPad. Try playing a piano on your iPhone. It's much harder. I mean, it's pretty clear. Large screens appeal to 3-year-olds. Large screens appeal to 90-year-olds. Large screens appeal to people in the enterprise. All the money, all the, the sexiest things in the world, the enterprise and the entertainment industry, they all want the larger tablet computer. Amazon and Google haven't shipped one. Right? That's devastating fact. And I don't think it's because they're stupid. I don't think it's because they don't have the money. I don't think it's because they don't have the will or the insight. I don't think they can. Right? And I think that's the elephant in the room right now with regard to the mobile wave. Because if Apple continues at its current rate, they're going to tip the entire market. We'll get to the point where Apple's running 100 million units a year. I just can't conceive of any company catching them. I mean, short of government intervention, if they get to 100 million units without an effective competitor, the next stop is 1 billion. And there's about 5 to 6 billion natural users of tablet computers in the world. I mean, that's the literate population. Call it 5 billion if you want to be conservative. There's just no reason why they won't go to 5 billion. So Apple Computer may very well pop out with 2 or 3 billion tablet users, and that entire market's going to look more like the iPod market, not the smartphone market. This is what Google doesn't want to talk about, and this is a devastating fact for Microsoft, because software that runs on an iPad is written in Objective-C, which is dragging Macintosh computers into every corporation on Earth. If you're building an application for a consumer, then you have to build it on either a smartphone or a tablet. If it's a smartphone, you hedge your bet and you do it on Android or iOS, but you do iOS first. If it's a tablet application, you've got to do it on the iOS. And you have to do it with Objective-C, you have to do it with a Macintosh, which is very, very good for Apple. It also means that Apple's building up a lead of 100 to 200,000 applications, all of which are unique, innovative, never in the history of man ever created, and they're running on an iPad. Now, how is anybody else going to catch that ecosystem? And who's got the most to lose? Microsoft, presumably. And so what's Microsoft's announcement a week ago? Microsoft comes out with a press conference, they announced the Surface. And I think it's the most disastrous product announcement in a decade, right? If I was teaching a business school class, I don't think you could pick an announcement that would be illustrative of more mistakes than the Microsoft announcement, because it goes something like this. We've been telling you for a long time that we wanted to be the software business, and we're going to use partners like HP and Dell to create our PCs, and the PC is all you need. But we've changed our mind, and now we decided you need a tablet. And we decided we need to manufacture the tablet because they can't. And we didn't work with them to it. And here's the tablet. We've made no compromise on the tablet, except for the fact that you can't buy it because we're not shipping it. We don't know what the price will be. We don't know when we'll ship it. We normally work with Intel, so we created a version with Intel, but we're not sure it'll work. So we also have another version with another ARM chipset. And we've got one operating system, but that might not work, so we have another operating system. And so you'll have your choice of 2 operating systems, 2 chipsets. We don't know if it's going to work on a mobile network. We don't have any announced partnership with Verizon or AT&T or any other mobile company. We'll let you know whether or not it is going to work. We're not making any compromises, so we're going to give you a keyboard so you can run all those good Microsoft Outlook apps, which, by the way, everyone hates that actually uses a tablet computer. Everybody hates them. If you look at Excel and you look at Word, those applications haven't added value in the economy in a decade, maybe not in 20 years. There's not a feature in Excel that I use today that they didn't have 20 years ago. And in fact, now when I try to use it, they've added so much cumbersome crap to the menu system, I can't even find anything anymore. So here I am, I'm a dual degree MIT grad that runs a software company with 3,000 people working for me, and I get lost trying to use Excel. And I learned to use it and mastered it 20 years ago. So that's an example of negative value added. You know, the smart money says they put the keyboard on the tablet because they're going to have this commitment to backward compatibility, but backward compatibility is crap, right? And the most devastating statistic I can think of is $9.95. I can buy a word processor from Apple for $9, and it would cost me $400 to buy the suite from Microsoft. So what you've got there is a massive franchise that's under attack. If they were smart, they would throw away all that and rebuild it all in a new operating system in a new way. But they're not going to. They're going to continue to try to port it. They're going to drag it. And because they're continuing to try to drag it, they need incredible amounts of horsepower, which they can't get. And the result is an announcement where they basically announce a tablet with no compromises that's impossible to buy. And of course, the impossible to buy violates like a basic tenet of technology, and it's one that Apple stuck to well. If you remember Apple Computer back in the early 90s, the late 80s, they had this problem, which is they would ship a new product, they would announce it, people would stop buying the old product, the new product would get sold out, right, and they missed their numbers. Right? That's always the product of manufacturing capacity. That I don't announce a product, a new product, as long as I got inventory of the old product, because it's going to freeze the old product. Well, logic suggests then that you better damn well be shipping the new product when you announce it, because you definitely don't want to freeze the old product and not have a new product. That's a disaster. It takes you off a cliff. So hence business school common sense would say, before I actually freeze the market and alienate all of my partners and all of my customers, I probably ought to have something good to ship. And Microsoft managed to alienate Intel, alienate Dell, alienate HP, alienate every CIO, convince all the CIOs who were anti-tablet that they were stupid, convince all the people that believed that the Microsoft partner ecosystem was smart that they were stupid, and then not have a product to ship. Right? And so that smacks to me of desperation. They did that to try to freeze the market or try to get some attention back on their own efforts, because increasingly they're being viewed as irrelevant to the future of software. And that is devastating. Now, in the same week that they did that, Google came out with an Apple TV knockoff, because they realized that you're going to have to compete on all the screens. You need to be on the smartphone, you need to be on the tablet, you need to be on the PC, and you need to be on the television. But of course, if you look at the Google product lineup, it's not nearly as strong as Apple's across those 4 screens. So on one hand, they copy the Apple TV, which is smart for Google. On the other hand, Sergey Brin comes out and poses with Google Glass. Now, what's the message there? It's, I've got these really cool glasses and I can see, and they're cool. We don't have a product to sell you, and we're not going to have a product to sell you until maybe 2014, when we might have a product to sell you. Now, so what you saw was the number 2 and the number 3 player in the space, both acting out of weakness and desperation because they're so freaked out by the number 1 player. Now, the Microsoft mistake is, I announce a non-product and alienate everybody and show myself to be ineffectual. And the Google mistake is, I announce a cool idea that I can't currently ship, But the mistake is, there are now 100 companies in Silicon Valley that will be able to raise $10 to $20 million like that to do that same thing. Google just pumped $1 billion into that market into competitors of theirs. That's a mistake. Number two, if there were 27 guys at Apple that were tinkering with glasses, and if Steve Jobs had said, that'll never work, they're idiots, let them tinker away, they just got their staffing increased to 500 people and their budget just went to $1 billion. So this is kind of it's as intelligent as me saying to you, I'm going to take my army and in 12 months I'm going to stand on that hill and fight you. Right? It makes no sense, right? In 2,000 years, right, the history of warfare, the history of thing, the one guiding principle is don't tell the other person where you're going to be and let them predict it. So the worst thing in the world is to say, I intend to ship this exact product sometime in the future. With Google, it was 2 years in the future. That gives the entire universe time to actually adjust and neutralize that. And with Microsoft, it was, we think we can ship something. We're not sure exactly what the something is, and we're not going to ship it the way we've been shipping it. But we're going to try because we know that our current business model is broken. All right, so if that's number two and number three, then number one is in pretty good shape. And I think that, in fact, the market just continues to underestimate what Apple's going to do. As for the mobile wave, I think the mobile wave is going to continue to roll, and we're going to see half the economy disrupted, dematerialized over the next decade. So if the fourth wave, the internet wave was about 5% of the economy, this is about 50%. This is a lot more interesting. This wave is going to change the way I get my health care, and it's going to change the way I get my traffic tickets, and it's going to change the way that I collect money, it's going to impact crime, it's going to impact corruption, it's going to impact the developing world. It's going to do more than anything, I believe, to lift the bottom 5 billion people on the social economic totem pole into the middle class. And so I'm enthusiastic about it because unlike tax policy or social policy or economic policy or political policy, I think it's undoubtedly, we want to do something useful for people to make $800 a year, give them a college education or an infant education for $100 a year. That's interesting. If it costs $55,000 a year to go to Princeton, that's not going to be helpful for them ever. But if I can give you the Princeton education for $55 a year, that is interesting. And I'll just leave you with the one thought. Again, I come from a middle-class family in America. I went to high school in Ohio. When I got to high school in Ohio at age 14, I had the option to learn French or Spanish and take 4 semesters of it. And the cost would be sit in a class with 30 other people and pay a teacher. And if you back that out in terms, it would be if my family or if the government could afford to pay $5,000 or $10,000, I could get 1/30th of a mediocre teacher to learn French or Spanish. In 5 years, a 6-year-old with a $300 tablet would have the option to learn any of 100 languages and get all of the teacher for a nickel. Right? And when you look at that, the juxtaposed opportunity, right? Children in the traditional education system, they're hostages to their parents, to their government, to the mores, the prejudices and the biases of their community, and to their economic status. And they're even hostages to all the other kids in the class who are going to go at their own pace, and you're the lowest common denominator. But children in the future will be freed of all those bonds. Right? The fact that your parents are ignorant and poor, and the people in your class don't have 1,000th of your talent, and the fact that the government doesn't want you to learn something, that's not going to stop you. Right? And I find that to be empowering. I keep thinking the Golden Gate Bridge example, and I'll shut up and take questions, which is, you look at the Golden Gate Bridge, right? Think about how expensive that is. Dozens of people died making that bridge. It was a $20–30 billion endeavor in today's dollars, maybe more. Now, how many people on Earth were qualified for the job of designing and architecting the Golden Gate Bridge when they initiated that project? Right? How many people could have been? right? I mean, presumably there's 100, 200 in the entire world that would have the experience necessary to architect a project like that. So the 19th century, the 20th century human condition was driven forth on the achievements of the elite, or the children of the elite, or the lucky, or the fortunate. But in a world of 5 billion tablet computers, if I can release a product like cut the rope, or build the bridge, or where's my water, and that lets you build your own bridge, and I go through 100 levels, presumably an 8-year-old might make it through 37 levels, and a 12-year-old might make it through 100 levels. And at the point where I can simulate the materials necessary to build the bridge, then we might find that the very best bridge builder in all of humanity, comes from a family that has $400 in annual income. And that kid is better than 100 million other people, right? And they will get the job. And if that's a metaphor for anything, maybe curing cancer, inventing a new approach to physics, coming up with a new wing or a new engine or a new antibiotic, right? Then that's the hope of the human condition. If we can somehow harness the 5 billion people who don't have a chance in hell of ever becoming a PhD in an engineering discipline because they can't afford $55,000 a year or $5,000 a year, or maybe not even $500 a year. Right? When we give those people the opportunity to learn at their pace whatever they want at a marginal cost near zero, then I think the human race has a chance to break through in a bunch of fundamental scientific areas which will better the human condition, which will elongate our lives and improve our energy efficiency, and will allow us all to live as middle class as opposed to the 5 billion people that live in the lower class due to no fault of their own other than the fact they were just born in the wrong place. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Very powerful vision. I'd like you all to speak into the mic when you ask a question, and also identify what publication you're with. If you'd like to speak in your native tongue, French, Spanish, German, we all speak those